You never really know the size of a moment until it walks back into your life wearing boots. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if this moment grabs your heart, don't forget to subscribe and follow along for more stories like this. Christine Affleck never thought twice about what she did that night. That's what made it beautiful and dangerous. She was 2 aisles into the Midtown Village Bakery, a white-tiled, softly lit spot that had somehow survived the corporate decay of the neighborhood. Flowers still dusted the counters. The old man behind the counter still refused to upgrade the register. And people like Christine, people who lived in the edges of quiet, still found peace in the warmth of fresh bread. She was holding a rye loaf when she noticed him. Noticed, not saw. Because at first there was nothing to see, just a tall, lean man with close-cropped hair and a stillness that wasn't natural in this place. He moved like a soldier even when standing still. Rigid posture, eyes flicking, not scanning for danger but for exits. The kind of presence people misread all the time. Christine read it perfectly. She watched as he stepped forward with a cheap plastic bag in one hand, one that held a carton of milk, 2 eggs in a paper tray, and a small baguette. She watched him fumble with his wallet. His hands trembled, not violently, but just enough to make you look twice. Enough to make the coins clatter to the floor when the clerk rang up the items. And she watched the clerk, a narrow-faced woman in her late 50s who never used to be cruel, but life and rent and time had hardened her like a stale croissant. She looked at the coins, then the man. Her lips tightened. "You're short," she said. Flat. Loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. Christine stepped forward before she even knew she was moving. "Put it on, Mike." The soldier turned. Their eyes met. Hazel. His. Wide and unsure, as if she'd just yanked him from someplace far darker than this little shop. His face didn't shift. He didn't say thank you. He didn't move. But his shoulders softened by half an inch. To Christine, that was more than gratitude. That was surrender. She smiled once, just enough, and reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a card. "It's just bread," she said to the clerk. "No one should have to beg for it." The clerk scanned the items with a huff. "It's not charity, it's principle." "No," Christine said, still holding the gaze of the soldier. "It's humanity." Transaction over. Bag handed back. Christine turned to go, and the soldier whispered 2 words that almost didn't make it out of his throat. "Thank you." Not dramatic, not cinematic, not even heartfelt. Really? Feel real. She nodded and left the store. She didn't know his name, didn't want one. It wasn't that kind of story. She'd done what anyone should do, or at least, that's what she told herself. But Christine was wrong. The moment lingered. Not in her mind. She forgot about it as soon as she tossed the loaf on the passenger seat of her Subaru and headed back to her apartment. But in his, it was a fault line, a shift, a quiet, trembling break in a foundation that had carried too much weight for too many years. Christine lived alone in a brownstone on Denton Street, 2nd floor, above a dental practice that closed too early and left the building eerily quiet by night. She liked it that way. Stillness suited her. A former foster kid turned 4th-grade teacher, she had learned that silence was not absence, it was peace. And her apartment, with its mismatched mugs and flannel blankets, was the only place that ever truly felt like hers. She fed her cat. She set the bread down. She turned on the lamp by the window. And that's when she heard it. Not noise, presence. Not the typical city thrum of late-night engines and drunken laughter. Not movement. Botanical. Measured. Tires too thick for a sedan. Voices too clipped for anything casual. She pulled back the curtain just enough to peer down. What? 3 military Humvees, dark and quiet, rolled past the intersection and stopped at the corner just outside her street. Followed by tanks. Actual tanks. Her breath caught. Not in fear, but in disbelief. Not just because of the surrealism, but because the last time she'd seen military vehicles like that in her city was never. Not even during protests. Not even during lockdowns. Not here. And then she saw him. The soldier from the bakery. Only now he wasn't in faded jeans and a civilian coat. He was in uniform, combat boots, chest straight, face unreadable. He stood between two sharply dressed officers, all of them facing her building like they were preparing for something. No sirens, no lights. Intense presence. Stillness. Christine blinked twice. This wasn't happening. She turned away from the window and let the curtain fall shut. The knock came seconds later. Soft. Once. Twice. In silence. Not the kind that brings comfort. The kind that warns. She crossed the room, stood at the door, hand hovering over the knob, and for the first time in years she hesitated. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just about bread. It wasn't just about kindness. And whatever waited behind that door, it remembered everything she'd forgotten. Christine opened the door without a word. Her instincts, once dulled by the rhythm of safe routines and childhood abandonment, had returned with a vengeance in the last 30 seconds. The soldier, Caleb Walker, though she still didn't know his name, stood there flanked by two officers who looked more government than military. The kind of men who wore medals under jackets and didn't need to raise their voices to silence a room. He was taller than she remembered. No tremor in his hands now. His gaze wasn't pleading, wasn't even curious. It was anchored, like he'd finally found something he wasn't willing to let go of. "Mrs. Affleck?" asked the man to his left. Square jaw, a pinstripe coat, silver lapel pin. Definitely not local. Christine nodded, her voice still somewhere between her chest and throat. "I'm Director Harlan. This is Commander Reese. May we come in?" She didn't move. "I don't think I understand what's happening," she said finally. "You will," the soldier said. His voice had the steadiness of someone who had practiced saying those two words hundreds of times, but never out loud. Not until now. She stepped aside. No one raised a weapon. No one checked corners. They simply walked in, scanning the apartment like they were absorbing it rather than assessing it. The cat meowed once from the kitchen and disappeared under the couch. Director Harlan stood at the center of the room. "You gave a man bread," he said. Christine folded her arms. "I didn't know that was an arrestable offense." "It isn't," he said. "It's something much rarer. You gave it without wanting anything in return." The absurdity of the moment made her scoff. "It's bread, not a kidney." Caleb shifted. That was the first flicker she saw, the way his fingers curled in slightly at the memory. "You don't know what you interrupted," he said. "No," she replied, "I don't. And I'm not sure I want to." Reese finally stepped forward, laying a folder on her coffee table, a standard manila envelope slightly worn on the edges. Christine stared at it, but didn't touch it. Caleb didn't speak, so Reese did. That bag of bread and eggs and milk was his last purchase. Not of the day, of his life. Christine blinked. "I'm sorry?" "He wasn't coming back from the store," Reese said, his voice losing its formality. "He was walking to the river. After." Her throat closed. It wasn't disbelief. It was the brutal, nauseating clarity that struck people when reality and emotion met without warning. Caleb stepped forward now, slowly. "I had a Glock 19 in my coat, unloaded, because I knew I'd find a way to load it." Christine didn't speak. She couldn't. "I waited 3 weeks after getting discharged. PTSD. Survivor's guilt. Nothing new. But that night, something snapped. I told myself I'd walk one last time, see the world one last time. I wanted to remember what normal people lived like." He didn't pause for effect. This wasn't theater. This was confession. "Then I dropped the coins, and you stepped in," Christine finally whispered. "You didn't look like someone—" "I know," Caleb said. "We never do." Silence fell again. Not awkward, just reverent. Christine slowly stepped forward and sat at the edge of her chair. Didn't? I mean, I had no idea. Reese nodded. Most people don't. That's the point. Director Harlan tapped the folder. That's his full-service record. Decorated infantryman, led extractions in hostile zones, saved 12 lives, lost 9 brothers. One of the most disciplined soldiers we've had in 15 years. Christine didn't open the folder. Caleb sat opposite her now, hands resting on his knees. He looked at her, not like a soldier looking at a civilian, but like a human looking at another who had unknowingly carried him over a fault line. "You didn't just stop me," he said. "You reminded me I wasn't invisible." She laughed softly. "I wasn't trying to save anyone." He nodded. "That's why it worked." Harlan glanced at his watch, then turned toward the window. The tanks hadn't moved. Christine hadn't forgotten them. "So why all this?" she asked, her voice more steady now. "Why the convoy, the briefing, the whatever this is?" Caleb glanced at Harlan, who gave a nod. Caleb turned back to Christine. "I told them I wouldn't go through with the mission unless I could speak to you first." Christine blinked again. "What mission?" Reese cleared his throat. "Let's call it a final operation. The Department of Defense has authorized a classified support unit for domestic humanitarian deployment. PTSD cases, veteran suicide spikes, reintegration failures. It's not combat, it's a re-engagement task force for soldiers who still have something left to give, but not in the ways they used to." Christine took that in slowly. "And what does that have to do with me?" Caleb's words were soft but sharp. "Because they're building the model around you?" She froze. "Excuse me?" "You're the prototype civilian in the program. The first confirmed case where a micro-act of compassion had a measurable, verifiable, life-saving effect on a combat veteran within 24 hours of psychological disassociation." Christine stared at him. "I gave you bread, and in doing so," Caleb said, "you gave me time. You gave me breath. You gave me one more night to think." The room suddenly felt smaller. She stood, pacing to the bookshelf without looking at any of the titles. Her mind churned. "Let me get this straight. You're building a military program based on me buying you a loaf of bread?" Harlan finally smiled. "Yes." She turned. "That's insane." "It's overdue," Caleb said. "They've tried everything else. Medications, hospitals, therapy groups. What they haven't tried is people." Christine exhaled. Sat again. "And you want what? Me to sign off? Be a consultant?" Reese pulled out a document and placed it beside the folder. "More than that. We want you involved in the Civilian Advisory Council, a direct liaison to vets in high-risk zones." Christine picked up the paper. "No one's ever done this before, Christine," Caleb added. "You showed us a crack in the system, and it was light, not failure." Christine didn't say yes. She didn't have to. The knock at the door came again, a different sound this time, lighter, quicker. When she opened it, a young woman in fatigues stood there holding a small white box. "For you," she said, and handed it over before turning and walking back to the convoy. Christine opened it slowly. Inside was a single baguette, wrapped in a linen cloth, still warm. A handwritten note tucked beneath it read, "This time, it's from us." Christine didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years. But something inside her shifted, something small and necessary. Caleb walked to the door behind her. "May I come back sometime?" he asked. Christine looked up at him. "You'd better." The emails came first, a polite request from the Department of Defense, then a more detailed message from an agency she hadn't heard of, VOICC, which stood for Veterans Outreach for Integration, Compassion, and Engagement. Embedded within it were glowing references, a signed commendation from someone who sat 3 desks from the Secretary of Defense, and an invitation to attend a closed-door symposium on veteran reintegration strategies. Christine Affleck hadn't asked for any of it. She wasn't used to being important in the kind of way that made uniforms show up at your door. But now, she was apparently a pivotal civilian asset in psychological reintegration protocols for post-combat veterans. She still called herself a teacher who bought bread. Caleb Walker had visited her 3 times since that night, always at the same hour, just past 8, never after 9. The first time he brought her a coin from Afghanistan. The second, he sat quietly on the couch while she corrected spelling tests. The third, he brought his therapy dog, Juno, a retired German shepherd with intelligent eyes and a cautious tail. That third visit is when Christine began to shift from witness to participant. He had spoken more freely then, about the nightmares that weren't just dreams but full-body assaults, about the way the world sometimes sounded muffled, like he was living underwater, about how silence, once his safety net, now felt like a threat, and how that single moment, the clink of coins, the sound of her voice, the swipe of her card, became a tether back to a world he thought had let him go. It had made her pause. Teachers weren't trained to carry stories like this. They were trained to manage crayons, run drills, and spot signs of neglect, not intercept lives spiraling out of control in the middle of a bakery. But life had a way of offering tests before lessons. On Monday morning, Christine stood before her 4th grade class, holding a stack of worksheets and trying not to think about the binder marked TOP Secret, Civilian Council Program, sitting in her bag. It was picture day. Half the kids had come in dressed like mini lawyers. One boy had insisted on wearing his Spider-Man costume because real heroes don't need collars. She laughed, snapped a photo, and moved on. At recess, she sat on the edge of the blacktop with her usual cup of chamomile and tried to process the new reality beginning to form around her. Miss Affleck? She looked up. Standing before her was Principal Vera Thompson, stoic, cardiganed, and intimidating in the way only educators could be when their tone implied a meeting was coming. "There's someone here to see you," said, "It's urgent. Government ID." Christine's stomach clenched, but she stood. The woman waiting in the front office was in her 40s, crisp suit, hair pulled back, a government-issued laptop open on her lap. She stood when Christine walked in and extended a hand. "Ms. Affleck, I'm Special Advisor Dana Kepler. I've been assigned to walk you through your onboarding." "My what?" Dana gave a small smile. "The liaison role. You've accepted the civilian position for the pilot phase of Project VOIC, correct?" Christine hesitated. "I haven't signed anything." Dana tilted her head. "Perhaps not on paper, but according to command you've already started. Caleb Walker's adjustment has become the model for our entire reintegration unit." Christine sat slowly in the vinyl chair across from her. "This isn't what I do," she said. "I'm a school teacher." Dana's expression softened. "And that's why it works. You're not protocol, you're not policy, you're presence, and that's what we need more of." Christine didn't respond. Dana continued, "We're not asking you to become a therapist. We're asking you to be who you already are. Someone willing to meet veterans where they are, to sit in the silence, to show up, me. Because for every Caleb," Dana said, "there are 100 more, and we need someone to teach us how to reach them." Christine looked down at her hands, the same hands that had slid a debit card across a bakery counter without thinking, the same hands that now might hold the weight of lives like Caleb's. She nodded slowly. "What would I have to do?" Dana smiled and stood. "Just keep being you, but with a security badge." That night the bakery was quiet again. Christine didn't go in. She just sat outside in her car, engine off, watching the glow from inside the window. The same clerk was there, wiping down the counters. A young woman in fatigue stood at the back, talking softly to the owner. She recognized her as one of the women from the convoy. This time, she wasn't in a flak vest. She was wearing a bakery apron. The sign on the window now read, "Veteran-owned and operated." Christine smiled. Then her phone buzzed. It was Caleb. "Caleb, I need you to come to the hall. There's someone I want you to meet." She didn't ask who. 10 minutes later, she was pulling into a small church parking lot just outside town. Not the kind of place you expected to see camouflage or military protocol. But there they were, 6 veterans, 2 counselors, 1 chaplain, and Caleb. 2L. Christine stepped inside quietly. Caleb caught her eye and nodded toward the pew. The man seated there was older, 50 maybe, missing 3 fingers, breathing heavy through a set of lungs clearly weathered by both war and time. He looked up when Christine approached. "You're her?" he asked, voice low, gravelly. Christine nodded once. He chuckled. "I thought you'd be taller." "Sorry to disappoint," she said gently. "You didn't," he said back. "Caleb told me. About the bread, about the moment." She didn't say anything. "I almost did the same," he said, looking straight ahead. "But now I'm here, with them, and with you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, folded, paper thin. It was a receipt, slightly torn. "Found this in my old coat," he said. "Not mine, but it reminded me that some debts can't be paid with money." Christine took it. "Thank you," she said. "No," he replied. "Thank you." Caleb appeared beside her then. "This is just the beginning," he said. Christine believed him, and for the first time since that quiet night at the bakery, she didn't feel like she was just passing through someone else's storm. She felt like she'd become a lighthouse, and others were starting to see the light. The ceremony was supposed to be quiet. That's what Christine was told. Simple recognition. No cameras, no press, just a private gathering at the Veteran Reintegration Hall downtown. She hadn't even planned to go. She was still adjusting to the idea of being recognized at all, let alone for something she hadn't intended to be anything more than a decent human moment. But Caleb had asked. Not with words. He didn't need them anymore. He just showed up at her classroom during lunch with a small cardboard box in his hands and that now familiar look on his face. The one that meant something was about to happen that would, again, shake her life in the best way. He handed her the box. Inside was a single silver pin, an eagle holding a branch in one talon and a folded flag in the other. "What is this?" she asked. Caleb just said, "Wear it tonight." So she did. When Christine arrived at the hall, the parking lot was already full. But it wasn't just veterans. There were families, teachers, bakery workers, parents of students from her school. Even Principal Thompson, standing stiffly near the back but wearing a red, white, and blue pin that probably hadn't seen daylight since 2001. Inside, folding chairs were arranged in a horseshoe. A flag draped the front of the room. At the center of it all stood Caleb. He didn't speak at first. Let the silence fill the space like gravity. Then he stepped forward and motioned for Christine to join him. "Most of you know me," he began, voice strong, clear. "My name's Caleb Walker. I served 3 tours overseas. I came back with most of my body intact and none of my direction. I won't bore you with the details." A few veterans chuckled softly. "But one night when I was ready to stop breathing, I walked into a bakery." He paused, eyes on Christine. "And someone saw me?" Christine shifted. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. Not in heels, not in front of strangers. Not as someone whose name now appeared on policy drafts and psychological briefs. She didn't give a speech. She didn't ask questions. She didn't pull up my records or lecture me about therapy. She just paid for my bread. He let that sit in the air. And somehow, that stopped me. There were no tears. Not from him. But someone in the second row sniffled loudly. And now, because of that moment, I'm here. Not just breathing, but living. Contributing. I'm part of something again. He turned to Christine and gestured toward the podium where a glass plaque sat. She recognized the crest. It was the seal of the U.S. Department of Defense, etched in gold leaf. I don't think she ever expected this, which is why she deserves it more than anyone. He read the inscription aloud. To Christine Affleck, for demonstrating that the smallest act of humanity can rewrite the course of a life. Civilian Moral Honor Citation, Project VOIC, Class 1. The applause started slowly, then swelled, a full standing ovation. Christine didn't cry. Not yet. She stepped forward, accepted the plaque, and faced the room. For a long time she didn't say anything. Then she leaned into the mic. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "Really, I just didn't walk away when someone needed a moment of grace." She looked at Caleb. "I think the truth is, there's a lot of hurting people out there. Some wear uniforms, some wear bakery aprons, some sit in fourth-grade classrooms and wonder if anyone notices them. All of them just want to be seen. So if you can, don't look away. That's all." She stepped back. It wasn't much of a speech, but it didn't need to be. Afterward, a little boy came up to her, one of her students, Alex. He hugged her leg tightly and looked up. "Famous now?" "Are you famous now?" She laughed. "Only a little." He looked thoughtful. "Can I be like you when I grow up?" She knelt beside him. "You already are." That night she rode home in Caleb's truck. Juno was curled up in the back seat, snoring softly. "You know," he said, eyes on the road, "this program's rolling out nationwide." "I read that," she said. "They want civilian liaisons in every major city, school teachers, social workers, even baristas, anyone who knows how to make people feel human again." She didn't respond. She was thinking. Caleb glanced at her. "They're going to need someone to train them." She turned. "You mean me?" "Who else?" She let the words sink in. "Isn't that your job?" she asked. "You're the soldier." He shook his head. "I'm the proof. You're the teacher." She smiled. They passed the bakery on their way back to her apartment. The lights were on. The sign had been repainted. Above the door now read, "Because every loaf tells a story." Christine rested her head against the window. Her thoughts drifted toward the soldier she once paid for, the program now growing from that seed, and the boy in her class who saw her as something extraordinary. She didn't feel extraordinary, but she did feel ready. Later, just before bed, she opened her email. A message from Dana Kepler waited in her inbox. Subject line, "Christine, welcome to the Corps Council." The body of the email was brief. "Congratulations. You have been approved as National Lead for Civilian Veteran Integration Outreach. Your first training curriculum draft is due in 4 weeks. And yes, we're naming the framework after you. It's being called the Affleck Principle." She leaned back in her chair, hand over her mouth. The Affleck Principle. Her cat hopped up on the table and rubbed against her arm. Christine didn't reply to the email that night. She simply hit Save Draft, closed the laptop, and stood by the window. Outside, the streets were quiet again. No tanks, no Humvees. Just porch lights, warm air, and the kind of silence that didn't threaten, but healed. A silence she understood now. A silence earned. She turned off the light, whispered good night to Juno, and let herself believe fully, finally, that one small act could change everything. Because it had.